Roll Tide, everybody. Players spoke to the media. We're going to get into that. We got some rushing packages to tell you about, and it's decision day for a 5-star that might be coming to Tuscaloosa. All that right here on Cover Crimson. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. We're brought to you by mybookie.ag, and it's great to see you guys today. Oh, I'm not Jimmy. I'm just Mick, but you know what? Jimmy killed it the other day, and we loved having him on here. Let's get this thing going. All right, there he is, Clint Lamb, Mick Gillispie. It was good to see the old team back together again, though. The Jimmy and Clint team that I used to work with over at, what was it, Bama Insider, right?
Yeah, it was like, I feel like we had about 12 names, but yes, that was
Bama
the Bama Insider era. I mean, I guess when me and Jimmy joined, it was BCS Alabama, which confused everybody because it actually stood for Bama Coming Soon. Then it became Bama on 3. Then it became Bama Insider. Then it became Bama Online. So, now we're Cover Crimson. Like we just, and when you get used to, and I'm sure you can probably agree because you have 2 channels going simultaneously. It's like you almost want, like, as you're introducing the show, you'll want to say the other show. Like when I first started doing this, luckily you would always kind of introduce us. But when like Stacy and I would be doing something, or Chris and I'd be running it, I'd want to say, Bama Online, or I'd want to, when we first merged with Bama Online and it became the Bama Online channel, I wanted to call it Bama on 3. Like it's just, I'm at a point where I would love to just, let's settle in on Cover Crimson and keep it as is. But brother, how was your time in the Vegas? Did some things happen in Vegas that need to stay in Vegas?
Yeah, I would definitely say that, but not for me. I was just out there as an observer of basketball games. It was honestly, when I came back, I thought Jake Coker said to me that I looked like I was leaning on my tombstone. That was when I realized that, like, maybe I had a little too much Vegas, but it was basketball by day and then dead forever at the Sphere at night, right? So 3 straight shows, and then 4 straight days of hoops. Bama won both games. I'm a Maryland guy, so they won 2, so that was fun. And but I was so happy to be back. There's a rule I want to tell you guys about. 2 days in Vegas, perfect. 3 days, too many. You get past that, and it really sucks the life out of you. So, good trip. Glad I'm back.
Good, man. I'm glad. Well, a lot's been going on since you left. I feel like I had the bachelor trip. Then I get back and I'm a little bit sick, not 100%. We do a couple of shows. I do go to the pro day last Wednesday. It's kind of when I got back from pro day, I guess maybe just going and doing anything active. I got really run down. Ended up being very, very sick. Couldn't really talk. Couldn't do a whole lot. Ended up having to take Thursday and Friday off yet again after doing it the week before. Didn't like that at all. And then early this week, you were out in Vegas and you had some other things you needed to get done. So I'm just glad. I feel like I guess it was just a week ago, but it feels like forever since we've been able to consistently do something. I'm ready for kind of getting back on it this week.
Well, here we go. And we got a lot to talk about, right? And we'll stick with football, but obviously basketball tomorrow is going to be great too. And then, we got a guy that could commit to Alabama today and would be a huge addition to the recruiting class. But it was cool to see the players talk to the media. There's a lot more access to coaches and players than under Saban. And I really enjoyed Cuevas and Vandermark, but they weren't the only guys that spoke. What'd you get out of those conversations?
First of all, I thought it was good stuff from all of them. First time that I can remember talking to Xavier Brown. Was this the first time we've ever gotten him, though? I don't remember, because they will put freshmen out there. So normally the automatic assumption would be it would. I don't really remember. I could be missing something, but Vandermark, we hadn't gotten him a lot last year because he wasn't really a starter. Obviously Cuevas was the number 3 tight end, so limited exposure there. It was either going to be Dupree or Robbie Utes, and I just thought that all 3 handled themselves well. They handled the questions well. One of the things that probably stood out the most is anytime, even though you're talking to these guys and you're asking them about certain players, obviously with Gino Vandermark, he's going to be asked about the offensive linemen, some of the other guys and how they're doing. But then also it's like the who you're going against. And you love hearing those answers. And so the two guys that he brought up when it comes to the offensive line that he feels like are really taking some, quality steps forward. He mentioned Will Sanders by name. That was the first guy he mentioned. That's notable because this is a guy who's competing against him. It's Cam Dewberry and it's Gino Vandermark for that left guard spot. But then we've talked about other players, Olasalinen, potentially a Michael Carroll. But Will Sanders is a guy who I have been extremely high on. And it is very possible that he ends up being a dark horse in this race and could end up being the starter. And I think he's a perfect schematic fit. Had to get more experience in pass protection, but he's got the athleticism for it. And from a pulling standpoint, being able to get out in space, get guys blocked, I mean, just from that particular standpoint, light years ahead of Tyler Booker. Like Tyler Booker is just not that style of player. That adds some flexibility as far as your offensive line and what you can call. So Will Sanders, I thought was pretty important. And then Mal Waldrop was another guy. Now, granted, he's not saying Mal's going to step up and be a starter or compete for a starting job, but he mentioned how well he's doing in pass protection. Played tackle in high school, only a 3-star recruit, but he was recruited as a center. Maybe he could end up playing really any of the 3 interior spots, but a lot of people, despite him being 6'5", 320, 325, a massive center, everybody kind of projected him there. Through necessity, with them being short on numbers at tackle, he started off his Alabama career on the outside. And is he going to be there long term? No, probably not. Don't really think he's got the skill set to be like a full-time guy out there, but been doing some really good things as far as pass protection. So I thought that was notable. I understand he was just a 3-star recruit, but this is what I would view as another evaluation by the coaching staff where I think he's going to end up far exceeding what his recruiting ranking was coming out of high school. I think he could end up being a pretty good player down the line.
That would be awesome. Yeah. And I mean, they need those guys too, like I feel like when Saban was there and players just couldn't transfer, you'd be looking at the bench and you'd be like, man, there's like 2 dudes that if there were times where the better player was on the bench just because they were younger.
That is, yeah, 100%. I think an example, even as recently as a couple of years ago, like Jaden Roberts, he was a 3rd-string right guard. Terrence Ferguson was ahead of him. Obviously, Darian Dalcourt was a starter. It took a couple of injuries for Jaden Roberts to get his chance, and it really stabilized the offensive line against Texas A&M and kind of helped them shore up at least one spot that was kind of a struggle spot for them. And so, like, you see that, and you're like, I mean, why wasn't this guy starting all year? But youth. He was still a pretty had years in the system at that given time. But Terrence Ferguson was a guy who was up there. Darian Dalcourt had been around for forever, so it kind of made sense. But I think the more of those guys you got, the better off you are. As far as the defensive side, because Gino Vandermark was asked about that, he said he was really impressed with the growth from Jeremiah Beeman and Edric Hill, which is just another guy bringing those two up. And we'll get to that here in just a second because I think Edric Hill in particular and what he can kind of provide Alabama's defense in certain packages or situations can be very beneficial. But, I thought that was certainly noteworthy because we keep talking about how Alabama needs to build more depth on the interior of its defensive line. You're expecting James Smith to be a dude. We know Tim Keenan's a dude. If you can get Edric Hill and Jeremiah Beeman, you're going to need more than that. You probably need at least a 5th interior guy who you can trust, but that really helps solidify at least a portion of your depth if those guys continue to grow and develop.
Yeah, really interesting. All right, well, we'll be keeping an eye on it, and obviously the 8A game, we're going to be in Tuscaloosa for it, and we're going to do our show from Innisfree. So if you guys are around, it's you can bring your kids. I mean, it's a restaurant until 6:00, so we'll be there. What after the game, probably be 2:00 or something, so you guys can catch us in person if you want. Let's talk about pass rushing packages. The ability to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, so one of the things that kind of made me want to talk about this, I was watching some Philadelphia Eagles tape, and reigning Super Bowl champions, what they've done up front as far as accumulating talent. Now, one of the guys that we're going to kind of be talking about, Milton Williams, he was a free agent, this offseason and signed with the New England Patriots, so he's no longer there. But just their ability to go out there and get Jordan Davis in the first round. They got Jalen Carter. They got Nolan Smith, a lot of guys out of Georgia. But then they had, Josh Sweat, Jalix Hunt. They have a wide variety of players that they can use. And in those obvious passing situations, I thought how they attacked offenses was really good. And it's something that I started going back through, and I haven't gone and rewatched every snap through this lens, but some of the matchups, what they do is like in those obvious passing situations, that typical one technique nose. They kind of sub him out, a guy like Jordan Davis, and they bring in a Milton Williams. You end up having two, what I would call three technique defensive tackles, which it could be a 2-eye, it could be a 4-eye, it could be a 4, but just really what I would call two disruptors. And they kind of line them a little bit wider out. And then you have a pass, some of your pass rushing specialists. They have a Josh Sweat, they have a Nolan Smith. And so I'll go ahead and pull up what I'm talking about. So what I wanted to discuss here was on the right, you got Milton Williams, who is the player that is more of a, he would play on some drive to drive stuff, but it was more so situationally used as an interior pass rusher. When you look at this on the left, you got Jalen Carter, who's kind of kicked out to being a 4 technique, head up the right tackle, I guess. But then you got Milton Williams, who's playing on as a 4-eye on the other tackle. Then you've got kind of outside of that, you got two defensive ends or pass rushers, and Nolan Smith on the left playing that wide 9 technique, and Josh Sweat on the right. And then you've got your typical two off-ball linebackers. And, they need to be able to have athleticism. You love the blitzing ability of a Zach Bond. For anybody who's not familiar, is 53 on the right there, but he had played some edge rusher. And then when he got to Philadelphia, they moved him permanently off the ball. Ended up being a phenomenal player as far as in coverage, as far as being able to get after the quarterback as an off-ball blitzer or as a situational edge rusher. And then you got Nakobe Dean there on the left, number 17. But the reason I brought this up is when you compare it to Alabama, this is a 3rd and 18 situation against Missouri. And you've got two, what I would call wolves, even though on the right it's Jahad Campbell, who was typically an off-ball linebacker. They would play him as a wolf some. And then on the left, you've got Quandarius Robinson. So you've kind of bolstered your ability to get after the quarterback out there on the edge. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's either LT Overton on the right or it is Jamarian Latham. It's one of those two guys, but you got Deontay Lawson, you got Justin Jefferson, and then Tim Keenan is the one who I have highlighted. It's a 3rd and 18 situation. He's, I like what he provides from an early down perspective, but I would like to see a little bit more as far as doing what Philadelphia was doing with some of these guys, where you get more athleticism on the interior. They got 4 juiced up pass rushers. And what you do is when you kind of play them further outside, if you're playing this one technique on the outside shoulder of the center, then it makes his job easier from a pass protection standpoint. When you go with more of you spread your interior guys out, you force the center to slide one direction or the other, which is going to leave the other player, the other 3 tech is what I would call them, even though they're not in 3 techs here. It's going to leave them in a one-on-one matchup. And if you've got guys who can win those matchups, then you're going to have a lot of success in these sorts of situations. Alabama is, this is 3rd and 18. This is as obvious passing situation as it gets. But then you go here and it's 2-3 techs. It's same situation where you've got Quay Russaw with Jahad Campbell. I think the more of this, you've got to earn the right to get after the quarterback, which I think at times Alabama didn't do a good enough job of that, which is kind of what limited some of their pass rushing potential. If it's 3rd and 3 or it's 3rd and 4, those are 3rd and medium situations or 3rd and short situations. You don't know if they're going to run it or throw it. You can't really put this type of package out there and expect to have consistent success, because they can pop you with a run, get a first down, go hurry up, and now you're in big trouble. But if you can keep them in 3rd and longer situations, you're in a much better position to be able to align in these types of ways and get after, the opposing quarterback. This is something else that Alabama does. Just wanted to point it out. What you would call the double mug, where you're bringing the two off-ball linebackers into A gaps. What does that do for you? It forces the offensive line to account for all 6 possible blitzers or players who could be getting after the quarterback. And they're going to bail guys. They'll bring the 2 A-gap players, the 2 off-ball guys. They'll bail out Jahad Campbell and Quay Russaw, and then, still rush forward. But just from a versatility standpoint, it really provides some flexibility. But I just wanted to finish it with this, and I've gone on this huge rant, but it's just something that I was thinking about. Alabama, whether it be Kelby Collins, LT Overton, Jordan Renaud, that bandit position, kind of being able to play 4 on the inside shoulder of the tackle, whether it be 3 tech on the outside shoulder of the guard. I think they got some flexibility there. I think James Smith and Edric Hill, let them get on the field and get after the quarterback, but then get 2 edge rushers like you saw there, and who that ends up being. I think you got a wide variety of players who it could be, but just you've got enough guys who can dominate in one-on-one matchups where you've got to put yourself in a position where you can get those types of players on the field together and let them win in those situations. I think if Alabama can do that, you will see the sack production go up while also maintaining a strong turnover rate.
Yeah. Well,
a lot of talking, Mick.
Yeah, no, Sorry. Do you think that they're looking at it like that? Is Kane Womack debating the same thing?
Well, I think that, the goal was always the same. I guarantee if you were to ask Kane Womack, he'd be like, yeah, I would love to get opposing offenses in obvious passing situations and then let our horses get on the field and let them pin their ears back and get after it. You got to earn the right to do that. You've got to do what you need to do on early downs to make that happen. And I do think going back through, it's not like Kane Womack didn't have a lot of different looks and flexibility in how he aligned guys and the type of players that he used. I would just like to see situations, avoid these kind of situations, because I feel like in a lot of ways, this is kind of a waste. Now, Tim Keenan is a good player. As far as, I think he's a little bit more of a disruptor. He's really a 2-gapper, 1 tech early down type of player, but he's got a little bit more juice than your typical guy who's built like he is and stuff would have. But if this is 3rd and 18, I love what you're doing as far as like bringing Q Robinson onto the field. You're moving your best pass rusher, pure pass rusher, in my opinion, in Jahad Campbell. You're moving him to an edge. You've got, LT Overton on the field, who's a good, we can kind of rush from the interior or the edge. But it's just, add that 4th guy that can win and force them to. It's like the more you put out there of those types of players, and granted, Tim Keenan can be one of those guys like, okay, we're going to have the 3 rushers. We're going to collapse the pocket with the nose and cause disruption in that way. That's fun. But I think that if you can get like an Edric Hill out here, or, and James Smith played in these situations as well, the more of that style of player that you can get out there who can actually win and wreak havoc on the inside, I think that that's going to really open up things for your exterior guys to be able to have a lot more success. And I think Alabama, we keep talking about what's the next step. It's stopping the run more consistently, but it's also kind of getting after the quarterback and winning some of those, putting the offense in really unfavorable situations. The more they can do that, the more they can get off the field on 3rd downs. If you can maintain that with a strong turnover rate, this can be one of the best defenses that we've seen in quite a while, Mick.
I like hearing that. And I like hearing that. You guys will like hearing this with basically March Madness rolling on. MyBookie.ag's got you covered. 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip when using the code Crimson at mybookie.ag. And, you guys know I just got back from Vegas. I was out there. You don't have to go all the way to Vegas. Mybookie.ag. All of it right there on your fingertips. And we appreciate them so much. Oh, man, I hope the defense gets after him. I'm pretty optimistic about what the offense is going to look like with Kalen DeBoer and obviously Ryan Grubb teaming up again. But Kane Womack's swarm last year worked. They lost some good players to the portal. They lost some good players, because they don't have enough eligibility. They got some guys back. A lot of guys came back that we didn't think were. They've added some guys. So hopefully that's an area of strength as Bama moves on. What else is going on with spring practice as this thing gets closer to the 8A day?
Yeah, I guess we'll call it the A-Day day because it's not the A-Day game anymore. That was actually announced earlier. It's going to be an hour and a half practice. There's a lot of festivities and stuff surrounding it, that practice, but it's definitely not going to really. Last year, it didn't really feel like a game too much. I think it's going to be even more further towards the practice side of things than even last year. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but the fact that it's not televised, it'll be something. I would more so view it as a glorified, like the open fan day practice in the fall. I think that that's probably a lot more in line with what you're going to get. I think you can take a lot of away from that if you know what to look for, but it's not as glamorous as your typical A-Day game. But we're going to be providing everybody. I'm going to be, watching it like a hawk. I'm going to be taking mental notes as much as I possibly can and really trying to share some of the information that we learned from that practice with anybody who isn't able to attend. But I think things are trending pretty well right now. I think the coaching staff likes how the overall makeup of the team can really set up for a championship in this sense. Like you said, the offense, we're expecting significant growth. I think getting Ryan Grubb as the offensive coordinator, I think kind of getting more of a marriage between quarterback and the way they like to operate and how the coaching staff likes to call things, that fitting a little bit better. I think that's going to help. Just, I think receiver, being able to bring in Isaiah Horton as that really strong number 3 or maybe 2, 2B to a Jeremy Bernard. You've got your alpha number 1, like really deep wide receiver room, like the running backs, the offensive line's coming together pretty nicely, at least. Need to probably avoid injuries, but you expect the offense to be in a really good place. Defensively, I think you got the pieces to complement that. We just talked about like the pass rushing packages. Those become more and more important late in games when you've got a commanding lead. Last year against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, it's 28-14. It's nothing crazy. Certainly something that Auburn can come back from. But towards the end of that game, it's like they're throwing the football nonstop. When you can start putting in some of these packages or really getting after the quarterback and straining what they're doing, I think that certainly will help. I think the fact that you're going to have teams playing from behind, or you would expect them to play from behind with Alabama's ability to score points, or they're going to be chasing at least, I think that kind of bodes well. But you really need to improve. The disruption was there for the most part, at least from LT Overton. You need some more complementary pieces who are more consistent, but you also need to be able to stop the run and do all those things too. So I think the coaching staff likes where the overall makeup of this room from a complementary standpoint with anything, whether it be a complementary run game to what they're going to have with the passing game, a complementary pass rush to their ability to stop the run, a complementary secondary that's able to kind of capitalize on their ability to get after the quarterback and force quarterbacks to make poor decisions. Like, just everything seems to be coming together quite nicely on that front. It's just determining kind of where some of these pieces are going to be lining up and, pecking order and all that stuff. They still got some work to do, but I think the staff, from what we've been told, feels really good about, they see the vision with this group probably a lot more so than last year's group.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, here we go, man. And you know where else we go? To New Jersey, where the basketball team's playing in the Sweet 16. Finally had that game where you're like, St. Mary's could beat us. They've beaten teams before, and Bama just went in there and roughed them up. And that's what we have been waiting for, right? Struggle bus, Robert Morris win. I was in Westgate Casino, and was getting pretty worried. I was having to drink a lot of beer just to kind of calm my nerves. And then the other game, we smoked them. So now taking on BYU, we've had the big recruiting battle with them in hoops. Now you get past this one, it's probably Duke, but you've been playing pretty tough competition all year. I feel like this is another one of those games that it's if they do their thing, they should be able to cruise right into the Elite Eight. But I'm excited about it. Your feel on this team right now.
BYU is pretty hot. That's going to be a tough game. I think Alabama's more than capable of winning, no doubt. Never really know what you're going to get with Alabama. which is why, like, I feel good about it. I think you got to feel confident if you're a fan going in, but you never really fully know until you actually see them play, and would like to see them, be a little bit more effective from outside. But I agree. Rebounding's been a huge part of their success. Their bigs have been a huge part of their success through these first two games. Duke is interesting. If they can get past BYU, which we don't need to be like looking past that, but just talking about what kind of lies ahead as far as potential Final Four appearance. Duke, man, they haven't been challenged even a fraction like Alabama's been challenged for the entirety of the year. Duke's played some tough games. They played Auburn. So I'm not saying they haven't played anybody by any means, but just from the grind and the fact that you'd be playing them in the second round, you play a couple of games this past weekend, you play this weekend, and hopefully Duke can have a pretty tough matchup. I think Alabama, just from like a grind perspective, they're probably more set up for that. I think that gives them an advantage. How much, I don't know, but Alabama's got a chance, and just the fact that we're talking about them having a chance is pretty special.
Women's basketball, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've been a fan of Christy Curry, but I got to give her credit. I like the way that this team played. Look, I'm a journalist here. Okay. Now, look, I love seeing Alabama win anything. And I thought that this year's edition of the women's basketball team was the best that she's had. I mean, I like the way that the team played. Jay's daughter, Sarah, was just great. Her post-game press conference was great. And they lost to Maryland in double overtime, but they definitely played hard. They looked a lot better than they did in the SEC tournament. And, they got to win, and then they lost like they did. But they showed up and played hard, and, they got a lot of momentum, you would hope so anyway, to maybe being competitive again. I mean, they haven't challenged for a championship of any kind since Coach Moody was at Alabama. But and maybe that's not what this is. Maybe it's just, hey, we have to have a team. But it really is cool when you see them go out there and fight their ass off like that. So I think a lot of us kind of feel the same way. It was not a win, but it was almost like in wrestling when that you get over. Like they got over in that match. No, they didn't win, but they came out with bloody faces, and you're just like, yeah. So good for them, man. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, you hated it for the girls with the way that it ended. The making 3 free throws to send it to that second overtime. That's ice in the veins right there. That's tough. And then to do something like that and then to lose, you hate it from that perspective. But they got a lot to be proud of for sure. It was a fun game to watch. One of the more fun basketball games that granted, I've watched a lot of fun basketball. Don't get me wrong, especially recently, but it was as entertaining of a game as I can remember. I just I hate the way that it ended for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're at a point now too where, you bring in somebody young and somebody that's kind of geared up to try to win, where that we could get right back into the days of Moody where you have a chance to win a championship, and that's kind of where I'm at with this. But because a lot of the women's basketball program has been just so dysfunctional for a long time that, like you couldn't go out and get the top coaches because, obviously you're going to pay them. And then the other thing is like, why would you want to take over a program that can't win at all? Now, at least with this, it's like, hey, look, man, I mean, we got some players here. There's a lot of talent in the state. If you had somebody that that the players related to that you could recruit, where you could maybe make it where it's a lot of fun. And I got to tell you, after watching the tournament last year, the NCAA tournament last year with the girl from Iowa, I was like, man, if you could find somebody like that, and all of a sudden you can make money off of this, or at least break even, from a business standpoint, but we'll see what happens. But congratulations to them. And then baseball, another walk-off win, and they beat Tennessee. They didn't win the series, but they did beat them. There's a vibe with them, man, and they might have the best player in the SEC.
That whole gambling situation a few years ago, did that actually end up benefiting Alabama?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how those things work, because it was embarrassing at the time. Like, just you never want those kind of stories being why everybody's talking about your program. But Alabama did what they needed to do to really get things back on track and to a point that personally I haven't seen from them. Now, granted, I'm not the biggest baseball fan, but just since I've been tracking or following, this is as good as I've seen them. So, I mean, obviously that's a huge deal.
So yeah, and it's Rob Vaughn, right? So
Rob Vaughn.
Justin LeBron is another one of these guys that Vaughn has gone out and gotten, right? So Matt Shaw, who is first round pick for the Cubs, and now supposedly they're starting third baseman, and he was at Maryland with Vaughn a couple years ago. I mean, and then Jackson Merrill, who's almost won the Rookie of the Year with the Padres. And then now LeBron, I mean, this guy's got an ability to go out and recruit and develop players. And in his second year, I'm seeing a switch in the momentum. You know, I'm telling you that's exciting. You know, instead of all of, you know, the ups and downs and mostly downs that this program's had since Mitch Gaspard left, you know, to actually see like kind of like, hey, you know what? I mean, you know, we beat Tennessee. They're the best team in the country, defending champs. You know, they're spending a lot more money on NIL than Alabama on baseball. I guarantee it. You know, and then you know to go sweep Texas A&M, but then to find ways to win, and then to also get like elite first round talent and develop that is only going to make it a lot easier for Alabama to go out and get players.
That's 100% right. That's how it starts. You know, first of all, you got to have the horses, got to get them there. Then you got to develop them. Now, some people they say, okay, I'll take lesser talent, I'll develop it, get a reputation for my ability to develop, and then the talent will come. And then you know you develop that. That is a way to do it. But you know, a lot of times it's like sometimes those coaches who take the lesser talented guys and develop them, it's like it's a different process. It's a different mentality, right? When you're a superstar and everybody kind of expects it, you kind of walk in feeling a little different. And so, you know, his ability to recruit really good talent and then develop that, it's like, okay, he can connect with that really good talent and kind of make sure that he's getting through to them in ways that they need in order to be successful or develop how they're supposed to. And so, like, that's a great way to build a program for long-term success. So hopefully that continues.
Yeah, I'm loving it, man. Give me some more stuff to watch. Right.
That's right.
Well, Roll Tide, guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm efforting right now to put together our next episode of Elephant in the Room. I have redone my entire backyard to Coker standards, so I'm excited to get the Prince of Mobile over here to the other side of the bay, and see if he approves the look of the backyard after a lot of very, very inconsiderate comments from him about the backyard. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey,
it looked like a bomb blew up out there. We're good now, though.
I need to. Please tell me you got before pictures.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Videos, man. Videos.
Okay. Yeah, we need some. Yeah, but at least put them on the message board because I kind of want to see.
Yeah. Then that's a good point. I will. Like the before, then the before, and now the after, because we had trees out here. We had to take them all down because of they were damaged by Hurricane Sally, and they just like giant limbs kept falling off, and they all looked bad, and then they were going to fall in my house. Then it looked like just Baghdad, and then the guys came in and they fixed it up. But yeah, I'll definitely do that. CoverCrimson.com, guys, 25% off the annual subscription. And we appreciate all of you guys for hanging out with us over there. Clint's always throwing stuff up. Stacy's over there. And I'm seeing more of you guys on there. I'm trying to be on there more. You just got to remember, when you're out in Vegas, you get about 2 days in and all of a sudden you get what I like to call Vegas fog, so like day 3, you're like, what am I doing here? I got to get out of here. Then day 4 is like, am I really here 4 days? I'm walking around with a beer at 9:30 in the morning, for the
4 days that's steep. That sounds fun though. Now, granted, I bet
it's like a big tailgate.
I'm surprised you weren't a little more tuckered out. I would have been tuckered out.
I was.
Also,
he thought I was leaning on my tombstone.
Well, I mean,
Thanks,
that was a great episode, by the way. I had a lot of fun watching that. That was I think the people did too, the listeners.
He's been trying to get over here. Normally it's me that it's trying to get him. He's been trying to get over here. It's just it hasn't worked out yet. So he's pumped about doing another show.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch it. Another thing too, don't know what your plans are. We might hop on here around 3:30. Jordan Edmonds, the 5-star corner from Marietta, is going to be making his decision known. We feel pretty good about Alabama. We might hop on and talk about it for 10, 15 minutes, maybe, if that ends up happening. We might wait till tomorrow. So it just depends on what the schedules are looking like. But, be on the lookout for that, because I think as an Alabama fan, you need to be feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Roll Tide, guys. Yeah. And look, maybe we will be back. Just watch for that. Hit the bell so you know. Yep. There we are. The machine coming back at you again. So Edmonds going to announce five stars. Be nice to have 5 stars in this recruiting class. All right, Roll Tide, everybody. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. We appreciate all of you guys, as always, for being part of our channel, and we'll catch you on covercrimson.com. So hit us on the message.